The latest research suggests that psilocybin, a serotonergic psychedelic, may be useful in treating mental health conditions like depression when administered in controlled conditions. Welcome to Normalize the Conversation. I'm your host, Francesca Reicheter, and today I'm joined by Tara Portelli, certified natural health practitioner, certified clinical hypnotist, and founder of Arcadia Healing Sanctum. In this episode, Tara delves into the therapeutic potential of psilocybin, highlighting when it's not appropriate, her journey through multiple career changes, and how she empowers others to heal from trauma. Tara, thank you so much for joining me today. I am very excited for our conversation, but before we begin, I just want to check in. How are you really?
Thank you for asking that. To be honest, I feel an underlying stress right now. Like I'm going through a bit of my own personal life transition. So like anything, there's a lot of unknown where things will go. So I'm transitioning back to Mexico. So so living in a different community and with that comes, lots of question marks, but it's kind of exciting at the same time. So,
Oh, that's a big shift. I'm currently in a shift, not as big of a shift, but moving from Florida to California full time instead of being part time between the two states. So behind me, you can kind of see that everything's kind of packed. I leave Thursday, which is 3 days from now. So it's exciting to kind of have a change of environment but it's really scary and stressful, and packing is the worst part.
yeah, but it can be cathartic too because you can start to like unload things that you never look at or get rid of things. It's almost like a cleansing in a sense.
That's true. I haven't looked at it that way. I've been avoiding packing my bedroom. I've packed everything else. Today is the day. But it's hard because it does bring up a lot of different memories, and the good and the bad. And for me, with my mental health, that's a really big thing. Is I saw the pajamas that I wore in the psych ward. I was like, I have not seen these in a very long time. I put them away. And it kind of brought back that moment of feeling so, or remembering what it was like to feel so hopeless and in that moment. So it's definitely something I've been putting off because of that, but
Yeah.
it'll be good.
But I mean, I completely understand. Like everything you feel is very valid. But at the same time, it's like a celebration because when you look at it from this place of, I was there and now look where I am, and how I've shifted my life. And the fact that you're brave enough to make that move is amazing. And your biggest growth is going to come from the unknown. And that's pretty consistent. It's like when we're comfortable, we're not growing and expanding. But when we put ourselves in situations where we have no idea how it's going to turn out, somebody told me once, and I thought it was like really great advice. I was saying, somebody told me, they said, if you just go and do it, and what's the word? And if like at the like if you absolutely hate it, you can always come back, but you're always going to wonder if you don't try, So it's one of those. Yeah.
I love that. Wait, I'm so happy I'm talking with you today so I can actually finish packing and changing that perspective on it. And that's so true. I tend to think everything in life is so permanent, every decision, and it's really not as permanent as it feels.
No.
So that's a really great reminder that I needed. But as we're talking about mental health and the growth and the change, I would love to learn more about you and your journey.
Yeah, well, thank you for kind of bringing it there because it has been a very challenging journey. Since I was young, I was the product of domestic abuse and addictions in my family, not necessarily directed towards me. But growing up in an environment where you're always in like fight or flight or like that stress response, it really causes a lot of challenges as a young adult or even as a teenager. So I grew up in this place where I didn't feel grounded, and I was just trying to navigate that on my own because I had to grow up fast because I was in that situation. And so I found my first journey towards spirituality when I read the book The Power of Intention by Wayne Dyer. So I'm not sure if you've ever read it, but it's a very, very powerful book to show you that you're never alone in this life, and that it's when we feel alone that we really struggle. And it just kind of gives you this feeling of like, if you just let go of that control. He uses this analogy where he's like holding on to like a handlebar on a streetcar, and it's like, I pictured it like your legs are just flying in the wind and you're just holding on for the ride. And that's what life is, you know. There's a lot of things that we can't control in our life. And so we just have to let go and just be in that flow and trust that whatever is happening for us is happening for us and not to us. And so yeah, so my journey started with spirituality, and then it kind of just, you know, I was in and out of it. I never really found meditation when I was younger, which I really wish I did. And I ended up working in a career for 9 years as a paramedic, where my normal was being in that stress response. And now I translated that into my career path. And so I was really good at managing, you know, stress really well, until it becomes too much, because you not only have your career, you have your life stress as well, right? So when you combine the two, it's too much. And so through a series of changes in my life, I ended up finding psilocybin therapy for myself. I personally struggled with post-traumatic stress during my career as a paramedic, depression, anxiety, and then when I found this, I felt liberated for the first time in my life, and I felt self-love, and I felt that connection with something outside of myself that was guiding me. Actually felt it. Like, I always believed it, but I actually felt it in that experience. And so that kind of took me to this place now where I work with the medicine, and I'm helping other people free themselves of their, you know, their struggles.
It's so powerful. I mean, just going back to what you said about feeling this life is so much out of our control, and it's so hard when everything's kind of happening around us and we feel like we can't hold on to anything. And it does feel very isolating, at least for me. It feels very isolating when everything's out of my control and I don't know what to do. And when I feel alone in it, I start to blame myself.
Yeah.
And then I don't like myself. And that transition from feeling completely out of control and like I can't fix things for myself and I'm the problem, to that feeling of self-love and giving myself grace and compassion and knowing something out there is guiding me and it's okay and I'm not alone, is such a huge shift when I have those days. Can't say I have them all the time, but when I have those days. So I think it's so powerful when you're able to find something to help navigate that transition, because self-love is such a powerful part of working through the trauma and pain that comes with life.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think a lot of us do beat ourselves up too much. You know, we're shaming ourselves. We think that we've done something wrong. And a lot of it too comes from our conditioning. So depending on what kind of experience you had as a child, or also like society, government, even like religions can sometimes be like shaming. So when we can come to this place inside of ourselves where we just accept that we've made mistakes and it's okay. We just accept that that's just part of the human experience, that like moving through life is learning from the things we did wrong and not doing them again and growing from that. But that's really the best way to learn, is by making mistakes. And so why are we beating ourselves up? Because we don't come to this life with a book saying, this is how you got to be a human perfectly. And if you don't do any of these things, like you're not doing it right. Like, there's just no correct way. It's a journey. Literally, there's no destination. It's just a journey.
It would be so much easier if there was a book. I was just having this conversation with my dad, and when my parents have this conversation with me, it does not feel as great as when someone else is saying it to me. So maybe it'll stick now. But this idea that when I make a mistake or when I don't know what to do, something is wrong with me. I think the actual text I sent to my dad this morning was, I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Everything feels overwhelming. And it was solely because I want I'm 26. I'm still in grad school and starting a nonprofit and figuring that out together, starting I'm 5 years in. But there's so much unknowns and there's so much out of my control. And I'm still, I mean, in life in general, but then still being a student and having to do practicum, like an internship year for free, right? And being able to navigate what that looks like. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I don't know what's wrong with, and I go straight to, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I don't know what's wrong with me, because it's so easy to internalize that shame of I don't know something and something's unknown and it feels stressful and overwhelming and I'm afraid and worried to something's wrong with me. I did this. Why am I like this? And it kind of causes that spiral.
I can see that. I mean, that's how we process the unknown, right? Like we, especially when maybe if things aren't going the way we want them to go, like when things when they feel like they're out of control, we start to be like, well, what did I do wrong in that process? Like, what could I have done better? But when you think about your personal path, you are creating a nonprofit. I mean, you're doing something that you've never done before and that maybe has never ever been done before. So when you think about it, it's like you are the creator of that. So everything that you're thinking about in your mind is going to become your reality because you're putting those balls of motion to create this thing. But you have to dream it. You have to believe that it's possible and you have to have this vision in your mind in order to create that reality. But even if it doesn't work out exactly how you expect it to, you still are trying, you're still doing it. And even if it fails, like you're still learning and growing from that experience. So I think it's when we take that pressure of expectation off of ourselves and like expectation of like things are going to work out, it's going to be perfect, like doing your own thing and being an entrepreneur and managing everything that you're experiencing in your life. It's a lot. And you're so young, like do you get time to be like a 26-year-old girl like dating boys and having fun and like remember that you have to enjoy your life too. It's like when we put too much pressure on ourselves to be perfect and to succeed, that's when we break. That's when we struggle. And so you just have to almost like not take yourself too seriously. You just have to let go and bring in that like inner child, the playful, like, oh, well, it didn't work out. You know what? Let's try it this way. And like if you talk to anybody who does their own business or entrepreneur, they've failed so many times, but the most that they've like grown and learned have been through those failures. But I think we look at people that are successful and we think, oh my God, they've got it figured out. But no, like I've been in a room full of entrepreneurs in a conference that were like, I have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow, but I'm okay with it. I have to be because I have no choice. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just trying to figure it out as I go. And that's the whole growth and learning.
Yeah, I wish we got to see that side more. I think being online, social media, we see the highlight reels and all the good that's happened. And it's so hard to recognize that underneath, everyone's a human going through their own life journey and figuring it out. And I guess I'm curious for you is how did you know when to make that decision and that change and that shift from being a paramedic to then trying psilocybin, making that shift for yourself and then using it to help others?
Yeah. Well, just so you know, like I did study psychology. I'm not a psychologist, but when things are falling apart, it's almost like that chapter is closing in your book and you're going to move on to the next chapter. And so it wasn't an easy journey. Leaving my career as a paramedic was really difficult for me. There's so much about it that I really did enjoy and I appreciated. And also when you have a career where you're making, what feels like a good living, like it's hard to leave that too. But I knew I needed to change for my own mental health. Like I knew that it was time because I didn't have the same compassion and empathy for others. And they knew that's when I was coming to this point of burnout. So when I finally found something else that felt aligned for me, so I ended up going into a holistic treatment center for mental health and addictions. And I learned so much in that experience. And so I transitioned into that field. And then after leaving my 9-year career, that job fell apart. It went bankrupt. Like the company went bankrupt and I was unemployed. So I left my nine-year career. I took a leap of faith. I went into another career and I went bankrupt. I'm sitting in this house that me and my husband at the time, we had bought, and we're sitting in this beautiful house at the base of the mountain, and I have no job to pay for it. So, so you figure it out as you go. So it was the most difficult thing I had to go through. Well, one of many, but it was also the best thing that happened to me because it forced me to go start my own business. It forced me to try things I've never tried before, to try different career paths and different ideas. And so that's when I started my nutrition. I started writing a nutrition blog. I had been studying nutrition as well, like during my career as a paramedic. And I started a nutrition blog, and that was kind of the beginning of my path into this field. And ironically, before psychedelics, it was called the nude mushroom. So I was already fascinated with medicinal mushrooms, and so I was just I loved mushrooms, and somehow along the way, I ended up meeting a mushroom healer after starting my blog, and I ended up on a psilocybin journey, and then that was kind of how I ended up branching into this field. So yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, when you take that leap of faith and it doesn't work out at first, I feel like that's very, very overwhelming. But to see that you recognize you were at a place of burnout and you needed to make that shift, and you made that shift, you jumped in, and then when that didn't work out, you were able to make that other shift is so inspiring and amazing. And I hope to be like that. Side note, but going back to the topic at hand, what was that first experience like when you used medicinal mushrooms?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I'll start by saying I sat with these mushrooms for like 2 days before I even decided to take them because I was so afraid. I had used mushrooms when I was younger for like recreationally. I didn't really have any psychedelic experience with them. But first of all, I was on a solo trip for the first time in my life. I went to Mexico on this like self-healing journey, which is where I ended up meeting a mushroom healer. And he literally gifted them to me. So he wasn't willing to sit with me to go through the experience with me. He's just like, go take these. And so, of course, like I try to be like street smart, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm in Mexico alone. I'm gonna do psychedelics by myself, and I don't know anybody here. But with that said, I told myself that if I didn't feel comfortable in that moment, that I wasn't gonna take the experience. So I decided to bike to this beach. It was 9 kilometers away, and someone had told me about it, and they said, this is the most amazing beach. You have to go. And so I said, okay, I'll go there. I'll know there won't be many people around. I'll go there. And then I'll sit down. I'll let a friend know that I'm doing this just for safety, but like somebody that wouldn't try to talk me out of it. And so I sat down with the mushrooms at this beach, and I felt like this was the exact place I was meant to be. It was just like this knowing inside of me. And so after like kind of contemplating it, I texted the mushroom healer. I'm like, I don't know, like, should I do this? Should I not? And he's like, you know what? He's like, just trust it. This is peaceful, loving medicine, and I didn't give you enough to go to the dark side. And I was like, okay. So I took the journey by myself, which I don't recommend. It wasn't a large dose. It was like like on the lower end of macro for therapeutic use, and I went into this experience, and the very first thing that came up for me, which was exactly what I needed to hear, was I felt like I was like in this cloud in my body, like I was being supported, and it was like, you are so loved and supported. Like that was the first message that came to me. And coming from like a childhood where maybe I didn't feel that because my parents were distracted, like going through their stuff, like it felt like the most healing, just the words I needed to hear. And then from there, it just took me through this like journey through my life, being like, well, you stayed here too long. You probably shouldn't have. You were never going to change this person. And then, but this is where you're going, and look at like this is so exciting, and you have our support, and you're loved. And it was also the first time I ever felt self-love, like real self-love for the first time, because the medicine is very loving and comforting. And you see yourself through a different lens. You know, you don't see this lens of shame and guilt and like a negative perspective. You see yourself through this like, I'm this beautiful divine being that's part of all of creation, that's connected to everything in the world that, you know, that we see in our field. So yeah, it was amazing, very powerful, and shifted everything for me. And I haven't been the same since that one experience.
To first of all feel supported in that self-love. I mean, like you said, coming from a childhood where maybe you didn't get to feel that, being able to get that as an adult, I can't imagine how feeling of not being alone, of being, I imagine, good enough and worthy in that moment had to be incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's amazing because, you know, we don't need necessarily to do psychedelics to feel that, you know, it's, if you work on yourself, you know, if you really spend time accepting all of you, because we all have sides of ourselves that we're not proud of, but they're there for us for a reason. Maybe they're protecting us. Maybe they're actually one of our greatest strengths, you know, like depending what path we're on, what career we're on. Like everybody has this darker side of themselves that is actually can be their gifts. So when we see that, we give it love and acceptance. It's like we can come to this place of like, you know what? I'm not perfect. Nobody is, but I'm perfectly imperfect and I'm exactly who I'm meant to be in this human experience. So
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a really long and difficult process, but it's a process worth undergoing because we all deserve to feel that sense of love and compassion for ourselves and to feel excited about life and about being ourselves. I know that for so long growing up and looking in the mirror and kind of being trained by society to hate the way my eyebrows look or my nose looks or my hair, just all these small things, and to be able to shift to not criticizing yourself right away and loving who you are, I think is just such an important and powerful shift, one I am currently working on and will always be working on, I'm sure. How did you go from now trying that experience to then being able to help others?
So after having the experience and having worked in mental health briefly, well, I would say for a long time, because I mean, even my career as a paramedic, you're always in the midst of, you know, someone's mental health crisis. But I would say that it was like I found the solution for the biggest problem we seem to have in society, which is mental health. And it's not for everybody. It's not for every mental health condition, but it's definitely helping people to break free of that feeling and that I call it the prison of your mind, you know, to help you to see yourself through the lens that maybe that we were meant to see ourselves through. And so I decided that, okay, this needs to be my path and I have to find a way to work with this. But of course, we're coming into this place where there's, you know, not everywhere. Well, legalization is on the fence right now in most places. And so I decided to align myself with an organization that was working with terminal patients, and they were working on getting legal access in Canada for terminal patients. And so having worked with them, having gone through that experience, I was like, okay, I can see what they're doing. I can understand this path. So I was like, I appreciate that side of it because it's necessary for legalization, but I don't necessarily want to be a part of that. So I started my own retreats in Mexico, along with the mushroom healer. And this is like, talk about taking a jump and a leap of faith. I literally bought a one-way ticket to Mexico saying, I'm going to give this a try. I'm going to see, like, start my own business, like fully jump in, because up until that point, I always had like a job. I always was like doing my business, but I was always had this like the knowing I had money coming in, but I'm just gonna jump. So I took $5,000 out of my savings and like I'm just gonna go to Mexico and see how this goes. I can see the need for it. I can see how it's helping people transform. And so so yeah, so now it's just been, figuring it out. I'm like, okay, so, so as you go, you just figure it out. So that kind of is also answering, the fear part of like starting your own thing and taking that leap of faith, but also like, yeah, so that's kind of the path that I had. And I've been doing that since 2019. And it's been amazing. And I've learned so much. And I've met so many incredible people from all over the world. And I'm watching people that I worked with in 2019 still to this day thriving in their life.
One thing you said was doesn't work for everyone. How do you kind of help people figure out if it's something that might be beneficial for them?
So there's two conditions right now that we know of that they haven't done enough research on that it's going to be effective for, and that would be schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. And the reason being is because when someone's been in a state of psychosis and their brain already fires rapidly, it's almost like because psilocybin is opening up more areas of the brain, it's almost too overwhelming for them. So, so you run the risk of getting even like more sick. So right now those two conditions are something that is being screened for, like at least with my organization. And then the other thing would be like somebody that maybe is in more of an acute state where they like need immediate assistance, maybe from conventional treatment, like hospitalization, if they're in a place where, maybe they're suicidal or things like that. Usually those people aren't ready for psilocybin. It's not to say that it's not going to be your next thing. But right now, like you just need to stabilize your emotions. And once you can get there, then we can start to work together. So usually those are the things that.
That is so important. And I appreciate that it's really about the person and where they are to see if this is a good fit for you. And that I think helps people look into their options more, knowing that someone will be honest with me and tell me if this is something that might be right for me and give me more information.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that, you need to feel that connection as well. So usually for myself, like I'll always video with potential clients just so that they can even see if I'm the right fit for them, because, it's mutual, because when you go into a medicine experience, like you are in a vulnerable state. So it's very important that you feel safe, because if you don't feel safe, your experience is going to amplify that feeling of not feeling safe. So whatever state you're in currently during the experience is what is going to be amplified during, like, and so that can actually be more harmful than good. So yeah.
What is one thing you wish more people knew about psilocybin specifically?
That's an amazing question. I think the other really amazing thing about psychedelic therapy is that it's actually rerouting neural pathways in the brain, which is really amazing, because when we go to traditional therapy, of course, like I've been through traditional therapy my whole life, and I believe that there's a place for it. But the problem that is a challenge for people is that you're trying to override thought patterns, right? So you think a certain way, which causes your anxiety or maybe your depression. And now you're trying to override that with different thoughts, but it's really hard to break those thought patterns, right? And to like override them. So what psilocybin does is it does the work for you. So you no longer need, a lot of people say the things that used to bother me don't bother me anymore. Like I don't feel that anxiety about those things anymore. I handle situations differently, because life is always going to happen to us. Like we're always going to have challenges, because that's what life is about. We're supposed to have challenges, but it's like how we face those challenges will be so much more just with more ease.
Yeah, I mean, the cognitive distortion piece is so huge, and the impact with anxiety and depression. I know for me, I'm studying to be a therapist, and my biggest thing is finding tools in addition to therapy, because therapy is a really, really great tool. And maybe also finding some coping skills or some self-care practices is helpful, or finding medication or alternative treatment options. So finding what works for you and building your toolbox in a way that you feel comfortable doing at a pace you feel comfortable doing, and learning about your options, because I mean, when building a house, right, you have a million tools that you could pick from, and you decide, I don't know nothing about tools, so I don't know why I went with this analogy, but you decide what you, right? It's terrible. But you decide what is right at that time when you need a hammer versus when you need a screwdriver. And just knowing that you can choose what tools you want to try when you're ready. And you don't have to stick with just a hammer to build a house. You can use other tools. You need to use other tools. So when it comes to your mental health, when it comes to getting through life, finding new tools and not being afraid to look for information. Maybe you're not ready for it yet. Maybe it's not right for you, but getting more information and learning about different options can be a really great way to figuring out what works for you, because like you said, we're all different, we're all unique, and we need to get to where we're meant to on whatever journey is meant for us.
Absolutely. And also we're growing and evolving. So we're not the same person we are like at 20 that we are at 40. So the tools that you might need at that age are going to be probably different. So it is good to try different things and see what works for you and what doesn't. So yeah, no, I totally agree with that. It's a really great way to put it.
Thank you.
I like your analogy.
Thank you. I didn't know where I was going with it for a second, but it's just, I mean, like you said, we're always evolving. And at 26, I'm hoping I'm different at 30 and at 40. And as life goes on, because I mean, looking back, I can see how much I've evolved and how different tools have helped me along the way. There's been times where traditional therapy has been the biggest asset. And there's been times where medication has been the biggest asset, and then putting them together and finding different coping tools. For a while, I really loved meditation. Then I realized my cognitive distortions were getting so severe that I couldn't quiet in my mind for a little bit. So I had to find other ways, and I found breath work was really helpful at that time. So finding different tools at different times of where you're at is really important. And knowing that as you evolve, that can evolve. And that doesn't mean that suddenly meditation wasn't working for me anymore in that moment. It doesn't mean something's wrong with me and I'm broken and I can't get better and things can't get better. It means that I'm changing. And as I'm changing, I need to find what tools work for me in that moment. And maybe one day meditation will work again, maybe not, but learning to adjust as I go and not thinking that it's the end. So really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, yeah, you've been through it, so you completely understand, right? Like, and I know for myself, like my journey has been challenging too. And like when I was in therapy, it helped me at that time. And then I found like all of these different tools, like you're saying, that kind of I can use them in conjunction. And that's the beautiful thing about doing this work in a retreat setting is I can bring in many tools to support you. So it's not just going into the medicine. It's like, okay, well, we're going to do meditation every morning and we're going to go into some shadow work and we're going to like explore those aspects of yourself that maybe you've tried to suppress. And then we're going to go to the sweat lodge and you're going to have an indigenous ceremony, which is absolutely incredible. And then we're going to have a sound healer come in and like play all these beautiful instruments that they made by hand. And it's just this like synergy of experiences and modalities that kind of just work on all of the aspects of us, because we are not just physical beings, we are spiritual beings, and we are also energy. And so energy affects us, words affect us. Everything that has a vibration will change and shift our bodies and our energy. Like you can think about it when you're in your car or you're sitting on transit and you're like listening to music, and it's like you're having like a bad day and all of a sudden your favorite song comes on. It's like your entire energy shifts, right? So there is ways like that even to like shift and feel better and help yourself.
Yeah, and I love that you bring in different modalities because you can learn different things that work and you can see when they work in conjunction. I think that's the most powerful thing, is learning that there's so many different tools you can use at once, you can use at different times. As we are wrapping up, can you tell us how people can contact you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my organization is called Arcadia Healing Sanctum. And you can follow me on I am Tara Portelli. And if you want, you can add me to Instagram and I can send you a free meditation. Just send me a DM.
Thank you so much for listening to Normalize the Conversation. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. This podcast is an initiative of Inspiring My Generation, focusing on normalizing the conversation, bringing education and awareness to the forefront, and amplifying global voices to spark change and hope. Inspiring My Generation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization on a mission towards suicide prevention through awareness, conversation, education, and support. Connect with us on Instagram at Inspiring My Generation and visit our website inspiringmygeneration.org to learn more about our work and how you can make a difference.